We'll go over any questions later on. What I'm going to show you guys now is the UCM station administration. So any of you that do have a 6.0 switch, a 7.0 switch, or a 7.5 CS1000 switch, you already have this. If you had a 6.0, you might still be using TM because it was compatible with that version. This was on the back end. Some customers weren't even aware that it was there. But basically what your UCM, it lets you manage your voice and data over your whole network. They kind of want it to be like a big umbrella. For those people that are going to Avaya, it's kind of like a system manager where it's basically one big program where you're going to control all your switches. You're going to be able to do all your moves, adds, and changes, and all the back-end programming. So with this UCM, you could do all that. You could go into your switch and do back-end programming. I wouldn't do it if I'm not sure how to do that stuff. I would definitely have a PBX tech do it, or leave that to them because most people have maintenance with their switches. But you could definitely go and do your phone changes, like adding phones, deleting phones, things like that, very simply. And it's a pretty simple solution. Now the screenshots I have here, they're from a 6.0 version. So the newer versions are 7.5. They're a little bit more robust, but the phone part of it is pretty much exactly the same. But as you can see here, once you get into it, you have all your switches. They'd all be up here, all your elements. And you could go and give people different rights to this. Maybe you don't want somebody to be able to go into all the switches and play with them. Maybe you just want them to go in and look at the phones. So there's a lot of different integration you could do with it. And it's also a nice single sign-on for all your PBXs. So if you are administering a wide network of them, you could go to this one spot, log in with your one sign-on, and you don't have to know all the passwords for all your switches. If you have 10, 20 switches, that's a lot of different passwords to keep aware of. Obviously, you still want to do that, but this kind of gives you a nice hub or gateway to get into all of them very easily. So basically, like I said, it integrates with all the switches from 6.0 and up. In the future, I'm guessing Avaya is going to integrate it with their system manager, so I don't know if it's going to be an exact link into this, or if they're just going to kind of plop it into their version of it. But theirs is kind of similar. It's just red, but it has different features for all the Avaya programs. So you could also buy different modules for it, like the ones listed up there, like IP Flow Manager, Network Resource Manager. They're basically there for your network admins, the ones that are controlling all the IP phones, stuff like that, where you could, if an IP phone is down, for example, somebody's having quality service issues, and somebody else on that network is downloading something from a file sharing program. Maybe your network admin could use these other programs to find that and be able to throttle that person so the quality of service goes up. So those are other ones you might want to look at, but like I said, we're going through the basics, so I'm not covering any of those. I just want to let you know that they're out there. All right, so we're going to go in to actually logging in. So we're just going to look at some of the screenshots of how you'd navigate UCM to do the actual moves, adds, and changes. So you'll be logging in as the main admin login or any other equivalent. You'd get this from your phone tech, the one that set it up, because this software is actually on your phone switch. It's actually in there, in your racks. So they're the ones that install it, so they'll have all the passwords for you. From the get-go, they'll either give it to you, you're going to have to talk to them to get it set up. So you log into it just like any other website. You're going to be connected to it on the same network. Obviously, you have to be touching it in one way or another, so you might have to talk to some of your networking people and ask them to make sure that you have access to where this resides, and this will be on your phone network, so wherever your switch is. Usually they separate the two, so you might have to ask them to route you over so you could actually touch this site. So you're going to touch it, get into it, and you're going to get a nice purple screen. I think now it's actually white and red for Avaya. This is an older version. You're going to log in, put in your login, and we're going to go to the screen we were at. So again, these are all your elements. So you could go and administer your passwords. You're going to have all your different PBXs on the elements window. Like you can see here, I have a CS1000. It's hard to see, but it's a 6.0 switch. That's your call server. There's a Linux base because they're all going to Linux now. So once you get in here, you can start administrating. What do you want to do? Well, we want to administer this CS1000 and actually make a phone change. So we're going to click on the link. It's like over here. I think I'm going to get better with this laser pointer. It's over here. You're going to click on it and get into the actual PBX. So this is kind of everything you can do with this switch. So you have a lot of different options. If you go over here, you could go into the virtual terminal. I know it might be hard to see. Like again, you guys, I'd recommend downloading the PDF of it. You could go into the virtual terminal. So that's good for any phone tech that wants to do programming on the command line. From this UCM, excuse me, they're going to be able to administer all those switches, like I said, go into the virtual terminal and do their command line. So they have the option of using it as the GUI interface, or they have the option of using it just to get into the command line of all those switches, whereas otherwise they'd have to use other programs, dial in, have the right connections. This is kind of, again, the hub to all those switches. So once I'm in on this switch, I could actually go into the command line and start typing code if I know what I'm doing. There's other things, like you could set up trunks, you could set up hardware parts, you could do stats on all your cards, do stats on all your CPUs, all that kind of good stuff. But that's more advanced use, and I wouldn't be comfortable telling you guys that without consulting your PBX guys, right? Because that's kind of their territory, and unless you know what you're doing, I wouldn't touch any of that other stuff if you have those rights, because this is a live system. If you guys did use TM or other programs, sometimes they kind of put a buffer where you make some changes, it doesn't get put right away. Like with TM, they had a sync status, where if I made a change on a phone, I could say, you know what, I want this to happen on the weekend, or I want this to happen at 5 o'clock when that person isn't at the phone anymore. Because every time you do a phone change, it's going to kind of reboot the phone. So you're going to kick the person off if they're on a phone conversation. So this is a live system. So if you want to play around with some of this stuff, I definitely make sure you know what you're doing if you're there, if you have it. What we're going to look at is we're just going to look at the phones. It's just down a little bit. And this is something that you can play around with. It's still live, though, with all these phones, like I said. So if you do want to play around with the phone, I definitely do like like a phone room phone that nobody's at, or like a conference phone that nobody else is using, just to, you know, get your bearings with it. So to actually do all the moves, adds, and changes, we're going to click on phones. Once you click on phones, you could actually get in and do all your searches on it. So how can you search your phones? You could search by your DN, by the extension. So you might know the person that you're looking at and say, you know, I want to program extension 4000. You could type it in from the drop-down, click search, and you get one phone. What I did here is I did customer 0. So on a Nortel switch, I don't know if you guys are familiar with what a customer is, but it's basically like if you wanted to split your PBX into different parts, like if we were two small businesses sharing a PBX, I could be customer 0, you guys could be customer 1, so we know whose phones are whose and what programming's whose. But I've never actually seen that actually done. Most people have their own switches, right? So customer 0 is going to be all your phones. All our phones show up there. You could sort them. It doesn't give you too much information, but it gives you everything you need. It gives you your TN, it gives you your prime DN, and it gives you your phone type. So this is very TM-ish. It's almost like they sucked it out of TM and threw it on here, just a little bit different. So you also have the ability to retrieve your phones up here. You have the ability to delete your phones. You could add your phones and import phones. And you have a more actions menu that lets you do swaps, lets you change the TNs. The TNs are your actual physical location of that phone on the switch. So it's pretty simple. If you guys did use TM, it's pretty simple to use. And if you're on a 6.0 switch and up, you already have this. So if they're not telling you that you have it yet, some people might not know that they even have it. It's good to check it out. So once we do that, we want to actually administer the phone itself. So to do that, you're going to click on the link, which is, again, it's going to be an underlined blue link, just like any other web page. And you're going to click on the TN of that phone. So once I find it, I could search for it, like I said, by DN, by the type. I could give it the terminal number. There's different ways that I could search. Once I know what phone I want, I'm going to click on that link. So this is where I go to configure a phone. And again, for the TM users, this is going to be very, very similar. It's almost like they just took it right out. So you're going to be able to go to your phone. You're going to look at all the different features. So we have all our features. They're going to be in a box. You could scroll up and down and program them. You could find them. You could even do a Control F or an edit find in your Explorer, Internet Explorer, to find those features, because there's quite a bit of them in the Nortel world. Also, all your keys. As you can see here, we have an MCR key with an extension. So on the left-hand side is going to be what key you want, and on the right-hand side is going to be the properties for that key, what you're going to put in. So we have our extension in here. We have it marked so we can put in a name for that phone, so when they call you, you know who's calling you. So from those drop-downs, you would pick any other types of keys that you want to use. It's smart enough to let you know by phone type. If my phone can only handle so many features on this key, it doesn't give you the whole list, so it doesn't let you make a mistake that way. It says if my key 7 is only a message waiting key, that's all it's going to let me pick. So it's pretty simple in that sense. So now, again, these changes can be saved, but it is live. So any change you make on that phone, once you're done with it, at the bottom there's a save button. You click it, it's gone through, and if I'm on the phone, I'm getting kicked off. So how do we add a phone? Well, earlier, before you saw there was an add button. Adding a phone is very easy. Again, same kind of process. You just have a little bit more options. You could pick what kind of phone you want. So you're going to have a drop down. It pops up with all the phones that your switch can handle. IP phones, digital phones, analog phones, phantom phones, whatever you're using. You could also create a phone from a template, and I would very much recommend that. If you have a lot of the same type of phone, or a couple different types, but mostly people don't have everybody having a different phone. There's usually sets. I might have 100 of these phones, 50 of these phones. So it's a good idea to make a template. And it's going to be the same way you would actually configure the phone, by looking at the features, setting them up, and setting up the keys. You obviously might want to leave stuff like the extension number. You might want to leave that kind of stuff blank when you're making a template, because you want to fill that in later. But if you take the time to make a good template of a phone, you're going to be able to add that phone a lot quicker next time you do it. And another cool thing is, if you've, again with the TM people, they never let you copy phones in TM. On the switch, on the command line, you've been able to do that for a long time. So phone techs, it's been always easy for them. If they want to add a new phone, they say, hey, this person's phone is almost exactly what I want to add for this person. They could just type in a command and copy it and then change some things. They're finally letting you do that here. You could just copy from a TN and actually put in the terminal number for that phone. So you could copy it, then you'd have to obviously change some things like the TN, the DN, stuff like that, just to make sure it's not an exact duplicate. But you have that available. You have some other options to autofill things for you, like to autofill your extension, to autofill your TN. So those options are there for you too. I always like to do those manually myself, because when everything else is already copied from a phone or from a template, those are the things you want to control yourself. So what are some other features that we could do with it? So like I said, you could do your TN changes. Your phones could be copied. You could save sets as templates too. So just as easily for me to copy a phone, I could say, I want this phone as a template. I could edit it later on and then add phones through that template. So you have that ability also. And you even have a global edit ability, just like in TM. This is something that even the switch techs don't have, which is very useful. If you want to change one feature on 50, 100, 1,000 phones, instead of going in on a phone-by-phone basis, you could check them all off and say, I want to change the network class of service for all those phones in one fell swoop. So it's very nice that way. It also lets you do reports to find out what phones you're using. Like if you do want to find out the network class of service, maybe somebody says to you, we want to know what phones could call out across the country, or what phones could call out internationally. You might want to run a report and say, I'll just look up the end cost for all of my phones. And then on that report you could say, oh, I have a phone in the lobby that could dial internationally. Maybe I want to change that to not be able to do that. So that's useful for you. It has a lot of different reports like that. And it also lets you export all your phones into an Excel spreadsheet. So you could actually even edit them and then import them back in, or you could have it as kind of a database just so you can kind of have it in a physical copy. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to go over, we pretty much went over billing. I gave you guys kind of a definition of what the CDR was, what billing, where you could go with billing with your UCM. We could go to lots of different call accounting packages. We want to make sure we have one with a good database and all the reports we want. That's the most important thing. We also talked about that telephony manager is still viable. It's not technically out there, but if you really need to use it, you can still use it. It is just a billing package inside telephony manager anyways, so you can still use it. And then we went over all the moves, adds, and changes for the UCM and how to administer it and all the different features of it.